What if I told you that somewhere in the American desert, there is a road that does not want you to leave it? And if you pick up the wrong passenger on that road, you will never see your home again. This is the story of the Devil's Highway Hitchhiker. And I promise you, by the end of this, you will think twice before driving alone at night. It was a cold October evening when Daniel Reyes, a 26-year-old truck driver, was making his usual delivery run through a stretch of desert highway that locals called the Devil's Mile. The road was old, cracked, and barely used, but it saved him almost 2 hours compared to the main route. So he always took it, no matter what the other drivers warned him about. They said strange things happened on that road after midnight. They said people saw lights that were not from any car. They said if you ever saw a hitchhiker standing on that road, you should never, ever stop, no matter how much they begged you, no matter how cold or scared they looked. Daniel always laughed it off. He thought it was just something truckers told each other to pass the boring hours on long drives. But that night, everything changed. The clock on his dashboard read 11:47 when he first saw her, a young woman standing on the side of the empty road, wearing a thin white dress that seemed too light for the freezing desert wind. She had her thumb out, and as his headlights hit her, she turned her head slowly toward his truck. And something about the way she moved made his skin crawl. Every warning he had ever heard came rushing back into his mind, but he told himself he was being ridiculous. She was just a girl who needed help. He slowed the truck down, telling himself it was the right thing to do, and stopped a few feet ahead of her. In his rearview mirror, he watched her walk toward the passenger door, her steps unnaturally smooth, almost like she was gliding instead of walking. She opened the door and climbed in without saying a word, and the moment she sat down, the temperature inside the cabin dropped so fast that Daniel could see his own breath. He asked her where she was headed, trying to sound calm, trying to convince himself this was normal. She did not answer right away. She just stared straight ahead through the windshield, her eyes fixed on the darkness of the road. And after a long, uncomfortable silence, she finally spoke in a voice that sounded distant, like it was coming from somewhere far behind her. She said only one sentence. She said, "Keep driving. Do not stop, no matter what you hear." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine, but he pressed the gas and continued down the highway, glancing at her every few seconds. She had not blinked once, not a single time. Her hands rested on her lap, pale and still, and her white dress seemed to glow faintly under the dashboard lights, almost like it was reflecting a light that was not actually there. A few minutes passed in silence, and then Daniel heard something that made his blood run cold. A soft knocking sound coming from the back of the truck, from the empty trailer he was pulling behind him. He knew the trailer was empty. He had checked it himself before leaving the depot. But the knocking continued, slow and deliberate, like someone was trapped inside, trying to get out. He looked at the woman beside him, and she finally turned her head to look directly at him for the first time. Her eyes completely black, no white, no color, just endless darkness staring back at him. She repeated the same words, "Keep driving. Do not stop, no matter what you hear." Daniel's hands were shaking on the steering wheel now, sweat forming on his forehead despite the freezing cold inside the cabin. The knocking grew louder, turning into pounding, like something heavy was slamming against the metal walls of the trailer. And then he heard a voice, a man's voice, screaming from inside the trailer, begging him to stop the truck, begging him to open the door, saying he was trapped and hurt and needed help. Every instinct in Daniel's body told him to stop, to check on whoever was back there. But the woman beside him whispered again, "Do not stop." And this time her voice sounded like it was overlapping with itself. like 10 voices, speaking at once from her mouth. Daniel kept driving, tears now running down his face from pure terror, his foot pressing harder on the gas pedal as the screaming from the trailer turned into something less human, a wet, tearing, guttural sound that he would never be able to forget for the rest of his life. The headlights of his truck began to flicker, and for a brief second, in that flickering darkness, he saw shapes standing on both sides of the road, tall, thin figures with no faces, watching the truck pass by, standing perfectly still, like statues planted in the sand. He wanted to scream, but no sound came out of his mouth. The woman beside him suddenly reached over and grabbed his arm with an ice-cold hand, her grip stronger than anything human should be capable of. And she said, almost gently now, "We are almost through. Just a little further. Do not look in the mirror." Of course, the moment she said that, Daniel's eyes instantly moved to the rearview mirror, and what he saw there made his heart nearly stop. The trailer door was open, swinging wildly, and something was crawling out of it. Something with too many limbs, moving in a way that broke every law of nature he understood, dragging itself along the road behind the moving truck, gaining speed, getting closer. He slammed his foot down on the gas as hard as he could, the engine roaring, the truck shaking violently as it sped through the darkness. The woman's grip on his arm tightened even more, and she began chanting something under her breath in a language he did not recognize, ancient and guttural. And as she chanted, the shapes on the side of the road began to fade. The knocking stopped, the screaming stopped, and the thing crawling behind the truck let out one final inhuman shriek before disappearing into the night completely. And then, just like that, everything went silent. The temperature in the cabin slowly returned to normal. When Daniel finally dared to look beside him, the woman was gone, the passenger seat completely empty, as if she had never been there at all, except for one small detail, a single black feather resting exactly where she had been sitting. Daniel did not stop driving until he reached the next town, over 60 miles away, and when he finally pulled over at a gas station, shaking, unable to speak properly, he checked the trailer behind his truck with trembling hands. It was completely empty, exactly as it had been before. No damage, no blood, nothing at all, as if the entire nightmare had never happened. But Daniel never took that road again. He quit his trucking job 3 weeks later and moved to a different state entirely. And to this day, he refuses to drive at night, especially not near empty desert highways, especially not when he sees someone standing alone on the side of the road with their thumb out, waiting. Because now he knows the truth that the old truckers always tried to warn him about, that the devil's highway does not belong to travelers. It belongs to something else entirely. Something that only lets you pass through if you give it exactly what it wants. And if you are ever unlucky enough to see a hitchhiker standing alone on that road late at night, you should remember Daniel's story and you should never ever stop the car. If this story gave you chills, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe for more terrifying stories like this one. Because trust me, this is only the beginning of what waits out there in the dark.